Welcome to the fifth video on using social media as an academic. In this one, we are going to discuss the major social media platforms that can be of academic use and which one you should use for different purposes. To start with, I'm going to discuss the trinity of tools I consider, in my opinion, every academic, every researcher should use. They are a personal website with your publications, including also datasets and software with complete information and updated. This website should link to any other social media profile you have. In addition to that, you need a Google Scholar profile. That Google Scholar profile should be linked to your personal website. And finally, in my opinion, you need a Twitter account. As I said a number of times, Twitter is one of the most versatile social media platforms for academics. And from this Twitter account, you should link to your personal website too. Other social media platforms are really useful, but from my point of view, as a complement to these three. If by the end of this seminar you are not still convinced on the usefulness of social media platforms, I'm not going to say that I don't care. Okay, things like that happen, but please, at least create a personal website and your Google Scholar profile. If you don't do that, you are invisible. Actually, you're worse than invisible. You are an uncontainable self. There is some digital footprint of you outside on the web, but you have no control at all. Okay? So you don't want your name to be associated to some pieces of data in bibliographic databases and publisher platforms. You need to have an online presence. So please create a personal website and a Google Scholar profile. So let's discuss all of this. Regarding the personal website, here you have a number of examples. All of these are people that I've met on Twitter. Some of them I've met face to face, and with some of them, I've co-authored some papers and worked on publications. I think that all of them are fantastic examples of academic personal websites. If you go to the slides, you can click, you can visit. The aesthetics are quite different among them, but you're going to find some common features in all of these websites. You're going to find the full name of the person. You're going to find the position or positions they are holding. All of them are providing a short biographical note. Of course, they provide contact details. Some people are going to try to reach you by phone. Some people are going to send you an email, so provide contact details. Research. Everybody is going to describe their research, their lines of research, the projects they are involved, the program committees they are part of, the editorial activity, if any. And of course, you're going to provide publications. Okay, we're going to talk about publications in depth. Most of them, I think all of them, are professors or educators. So if that's your case, you should describe your teaching too. Okay, it's not something that you do on top of research. It's a very important part of your job. In addition to that, it's really common to provide a picture of yourself. It's really common to provide some information about the talks you are delivering. If you have a blog or you have other social media presence, you should provide the links to that. And since sooner or later you're going to appear on press, it could be nice to provide press clippings. And you may say, but Danny, I'm just starting my career. I don't have most of those things. Where should I start? The thing is that I've gone to Web Archive and I've visited my website from the past. and I'm going to show you the how my website has been evolving for these 20 years. So this was the first version. It's not a really nice website. It's a bit ugly. Okay, at that moment it was bilingual in Spanish and English, as you may see, and it was providing my full name. It was providing my position, a short biographical note, contact details, some information on research, some information on publication, and some information on teaching. That should be the bare minimum to provide. Okay, and this is not difficult to do, so just do it. A few years later, I changed the design and I expanded and rearranged the publications section. People usually find it useful if you have different sections for journal papers, conference papers, book chapters, books, preprints, work in progress, technical reports, and so on. So it's much better to have it organized properly and not simply a chronological list of papers, especially if you have plenty of publications. By 2009, the design didn't change, but I reorganized plenty of information here. By that year, I had completed my PhD, so I added that to research. I started adding bibliometric information for my publications. It can be useful, maybe not for your audience, but for you in the future. When someone is going to ask you for impact, what's the impact of that publication? So if you have that in your website, it's going to be easier to recollect that information. Regarding teaching, I organize it, separating teaching in doctoral, master's, and university extension courses. I provided a link to my Twitter account. By that time, I was starting to use Twitter in a more academic and less personal way, and I had a miscellaneous section for things that I really didn't know where to put. By 2012, a link to the blog was included, and I started adding press clippings. In 2015, there was a major upgrade in the website. I hired a graphic designer to change the design. I asked a photographer to take a professional picture of myself. I bought a domain for myself. Maybe it's a bit of vanity, but I found it interesting. I removed the miscellaneous section, I add multimedia section for slides and graphic materials. Uh, in order to make the website a bit more useful for people, I created that section you see there on the front page, the latest updates. So it's very easy to see if there were some changes. And by having that, I was also forcing myself to update the website. Because if I go to my website and I see, oh dear, there is more than a year since I have put something here. So you make yourself feel a bit bad and you try to add something because certainly you have produced something. And I added to the footer of the website the links to different platforms. In 2015, they were ORCID. We'll talk about that. Google Scholar, SlideShare, YouTube, and LinkedIn. In 2017, the major changes were to the short biographical note and regarding platforms. Semantic Scholar, Scopus, and Researcher ID were appearing. In 2019, there was a little change. Researcher ID was integrated into Publons. So I changed the icon and the link, and I added a new section, News, where I had all of my updates. So in addition to have the latest updates in the front page, I have a history of of changes to the website. By 2021, I added more social media platforms like Microsoft Academic and Aside, and this year I removed Microsoft Academic because it was closed. That bibliographic search engine does not exist anymore. I removed Aside because I don't really find it very useful for me, and SlideShare because while preparing all of these materials I decided to quit it. So I decluttered a little bit the footer with all my social media presence. Regarding the picture, I know that it looked great after so many years from those pictures, but the thing is that from time to time it's needed to change it. Actually, it's kind of a meme, the thing about people having really young pictures on the websites and then being a little bit, well, older. Now, what kind of material you should provide on your personal website? Anything you are producing as an academic, both in your teaching and research uh, uh, aspects. In my case, I'm providing publications, preprints, and datasets. You should always provide the link, and if you're able to, and we are going to discuss that later, you should provide some kind of open access version. If you're just providing publications that they are paywalled, they are not going to be read, they are not going to be cited. So actually you're not doing anything in order to increase your visibility and your prestige and reputation, right? Talks and seminars like this, at least the title, the date, the place, and summary. If you're able to provide a video or slides, do it. If nobody else, you are going to thank that in the future. Blog posts, Twitter threads. If you have devoted time to create a blog post or to write a Twitter thread, why not telling that in the website? Press clippings. Believe me, sooner or later you're going to be asked for answers in press. They are going to interview you, they're going to cover a paper by you, they're going to go to your lab, you're going to appear on press. So provide at least the title, the date, and the publication or the station, if it's TV or radio. If you're able to include a link or multimedia, do it. For instance, with TV appearances, radio, podcasts, etc. Regarding teaching, if there are some relevant student work with proper citation, you should also tell about that. It can be a thesis, it can be work from some of your courses. If there is something that is interesting, tell about that. If you appear in other people's blogs, link them, and this is repeated. And the thing is, remember, by product, I'm not going to change that. It's going to appear that way on the video. I don't have time to edit this minor details. Remember, perfection is the enemy of good. And miscellaneous resources. If you're doing things that do not fit here, don't worry about that. For instance, I'm a great fan of mood boards. So when I organize plenty of information on a topic, and I think that it's really nice prepared on the mood board, I usually made it public. The second part of the Trinity, Google Scholar. Probably you're aware of Google Scholar as a bibliographic search engine. It's one of the most used ones. And needless to say, it's far from from being free of problems. It has plenty of problems, but I'm not going to discuss here the issues with Google Scholar as a search engine. I'm going to discuss here having a profile. Okay, it's really important from my point of view to have a Google Scholar profile. So how can you create one? Well, you visit the Google Scholar website, and you have that icon, My Profile. You click on it, and you would need to sign in. Needless to say, if you find it problematic to have a Google account, well, then everything ends here. Okay, you need to have a Google account. So if that's a problem, uh, well, then you cannot have a Google Scholar profile. So you need to decide benefits and downsides from having that Google account or not having a Google Scholar profile. Assuming that you are not really worried about that, or you accept that downside of needing a Google account, you're going to sign with your Google account, and you need to provide uh, uh, different pieces of data here. So they are going to tell you which Google account you're using. Maybe you can create one that is only for professional purposes, and then you include your name, your affiliation. You need to provide an official email for verification in your institution, your areas of interest, and optionally your personal website. So yes, it's optional because many researchers don't have one, but you are learning, you know, you're going to learn that it's important, and you're going to create one. So after doing that, a query is going to be produced and some papers are going to appear. If you are lucky, you're going to have a really uncommon name and surname, and it's going to be not that difficult to find your papers. If you have a really common name and surname, it's going to be a bit more difficult to find your papers, but please note that you need to have your actual papers on your profile. It's, from my point of view, it's a bit um, weird when someone has on their profile papers that are by someone else that has a similar name, but it's not that person. It looks like having an untidy house. Okay, don't do it. So you select your papers and then you decide, okay, how do you want your updates to be applied? Is in your case you have a really uncommon name like myself, you can go for apply updates automatically. If you have a really common name and there can be lots of misunderstandings with is this paper yours or not, you can choose email me updates for review, and then you decide if your profile is visible or not. Needless to say, I find it a bit pointless to have a profile that is not public. From my point of view, it should be public. That's the whole point of having a Google Scholar profile, to be it public. So then you can have something like this, and some people can decide to follow, so they know when you're publishing new things, and they can gossip a little bit on your papers and citations in H-index and so on. So I think this is important, and I think that it obviously depends on the area, but plenty of people, when dealing with someone they are not really aware of, they are going to look for profiles in bibliographic search engines to get some gossip and information to decide if this is a serious person with a huge reputation, or well, it's a underdog. Okay. Third part of the Trinity. The third part of the Trinity is Twitter. From my point of view, in my own personal opinion, Twitter is crucial to develop an academic persona. Nowadays, I don't know in 10 years. For me, Twitter has been really important. I met there all my collaborators, really, believe me. And for me, Twitter has been life-changing. It has been extremely useful for my career. I've met there people. I've met there new topics. I researched on Twitter. For me, it has been a core part of my career. So that's why I'm so interested in selling you Twitter. The thing is that it's so important for me, and I think that it can be so useful for you, that I'm not going to discuss Twitter now. There is a full section about Twitter later. Now we're going to discuss different platforms. These are the must-haves. They are not part of the Trinity, but they are really, really important for different reasons. First, ORCID. This is a service that, at the bare minimum, provides identification. We were discussing the thing about the names. If you have a really uncommon name like me, it's going to be rather easy to determine that that paper is written by me. But if you have a really, really common name, I don't know, John Smith, it's going to be difficult to know if you are the John Smith working on astronomy, or you are the John Smith working on sociology, or if you are the John Smith from Canada or the John Smith from New Zealand. So the thing is that ORCID is there to provide an alphanumeric code to identify researchers. In addition to that, you can also build a little profile, a small profile. But the thing is that at the bare minimum you need the code. And sooner or later you're going to be asked to provide that code. So it's easy for you if you create that account sooner than trying to do that in a hurry when you are asked to provide that for, I don't know, a grant application. Publons. In the first video, in the introduction, I was discussing that this thing about prestige and reputation takes place before everybody's eyes. It relies on public information. And there was a huge part of our job as academics that was hidden from the public. And it was hidden from other people. It was the peer review process. And Publons, or Publons, I don't know how to pronounce that, it's a fantastic tool to verify, record, and show your peer review and editorial activity. Okay? Some years ago, as I said, it integrated Research ID, that was a service very similar to ORCID, and now it's part of Web of Science. I strongly recommend you to create an account in Publons if you don't still get it. And I think that in the future it's going to play quite an important part on showing our work as peer reviewers when we need to somehow justify that part of our job. Regarding slides, okay, yeah, death by PowerPoint is a thing, I know that. And probably you're tired of watching at the slides, and probably your students are not really happy when you deliver slides. But the thing is that we are producing slides. At this moment, there are very little multimedia resources that are as convenient as slides and as easy to produce. So it's going to be useful for you and other people if you share your slides. SlideShare was a fantastic service. I was really fond of SlideShare. I was a happy user of SlideShare for 15 years. But the thing is that after being acquired by Script, as I told in other videos in this series, I don't really like forcing people to subscribe in order to read my slides. They are my slides. So I decided to quit SlideShare. It didn't close the service. I just put on a slide deck to say, well, bye-bye, SlideShare. I locked all of the slides there and I moved them to actually Google Slides. So you can provide the slides as PDF files if you have a website, or you can create them in different platforms like Google Slides, Canva, or Genially. The thing is that I'm not going to recommend one or another because they can follow the path of Prezi. If you don't really know what Prezi is, you're really lucky. Prezi was very fashionable some some years ago. It is still a thing, but it's a bit old-fashioned, and you shouldn't use it. So if you don't know about Prezi, you're very lucky. Last but not least, I insist again, and I'm going to insist on this in the future. You need your publications to be open access. I'm not talking about to submit just to places, to venues that are open access. I'm telling you that you have to go to that website, Sherpa Romeo, and you have to check the open access policies of the venues you're publishing in, because most of them are allowing you to provide your work, because remember, it's your work, in an open access fashion. Maybe not after being um, um, provided a layout by the publisher, but you can provide probably your author's version on your website or in an institutional repository. And you should read about preprints. Remember me telling about giving out advice, not in private by email, but in a blog post. Here you have a blog post that I have been using for years and years. Every single time I say that preprints are useful. So remember, reuse your work. You need to provide open access publications. Remember, Sherpa Romeo, read about preprints. Bonus tracks. These tools are fantastic, right? The thing is that I told you about 3 different tools that you need to use, and then I add a bunch of must-haves. So bonus tracks are really nice. They can be useful sometimes, but you don't need to get obsessed about using all of them or any of them or right now, because you have plenty on your plate at this moment. Okay, so I'm just going to discuss different benefits of these platforms, and you have to decide later if you are going to use them or not. The first one is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a professional social network. If you have worked on industry, probably you are there. If you work on a field with plenty of interaction with practitioners from industry, probably you need to be there. And as with many other platforms, what you have to check is what other peers, other people in your area are doing. If LinkedIn is a thing in your area, probably you have to be there. Video. This is not a platform, this is content. Video is really nice. You're watching a video right now. By providing a video, I'm giving much more information and in a more emphatic way than simply giving you the slides. If I just give you the slides, you have to guess and deduce plenty of things. But the thing is that video is really time consuming to produce, if properly done. So the thing is that my advice at first is not trying to develop, to produce video, but to create video as a byproduct. As I told you before in other videos, for me, these videos are a byproduct because I'm rehearsing. You may say, but Danny, you were supposed to rehearse maybe in Spanish to deliver this training seminar. Why are you recording the videos in English? Well, that's my justification. First, I have a number of courses that I deliver in English in my university. So practicing English, practicing creating contents in English, practice delivering lectures in English is important for me. And the thing is that as a computer scientist, most of the journals, conferences, and so on are delivered on English. So English is a language that I need to handle properly. So for me, this is rehearsal. For you, is something that may be useful or not. If it's useful, you're going to go on, listen to me, and if it's useless, you are simply going to quit the video. So it's not a huge problem. The thing is that in your case, you have to decide if the uh, return effort ratio is good enough for you or not. In my case, the return is very, very low. Most of my videos are not going to get more than 30 views per year. And apparently I'm rather boring because 15% of the people, just 15% of the people that start watching my videos and finish them. So the thing is that, well, if it was my goal to deliver video, if it was my goal to become a YouTube influencer and get that sweet monetization, well, that could be a dream. But as I said, for me it's a byproduct. If you want to see a success story, go to the slides, click on that link, because there you're going to find a great academic working on machine learning and delivering fantastic videos and having a huge audience on YouTube. Okay, so it's not that the video is problematic, maybe it's the content and the delivery. YouTube is a classic. You're watching this video on YouTube, but there are other platforms. Maybe you can choose Vimeo or you can choose TikTok. In the case of TikTok, it's focused on very short videos. On the other hand, if your institution has got an Office 365 license, you could use a Stream. A Stream is a video platform very similar to YouTube in some aspects. But the thing is that it's basically devoted to your institution. So you can have videos that are able to accessible for all your institution members, or only a given course, or only 13 people. So if you have Office 365 in your institutions, check Stream. Podcasts are really fashionable right now. I have no experience with podcasts. Probably I couldn't dare myself to to start a podcast. For me, it I guess that it takes plenty of effort, and it's not going to be a byproduct. Probably, if you are a heavy listener to podcasts, you are wondering about trying to do that. Uh, Start by exploring Twitter Spaces, which is a way to organize panels on Twitter with guests, with some coordinator and plenty of listeners. Or you can check a very thought-provoking idea, that of audio papers. The idea of audio papers is that an author takes a paper by themselves or a book chapter and they read it aloud, record that reading, and offer that reading in a podcast platform that can be useful for people that cannot read at a given moment, or for people that's going to be much more accessible, listening to a reading of the paper than trying to go through a reading by a machine, for instance. So check that. It may be interesting. Maybe not for all of your papers, but for those of you that you consider that are really bright. It's not my case, but maybe you're working in an area where photography is crucial. I don't know. Any life sciences area of knowledge probably is going to get plenty of benefits from delivering, from offering in a social media platform pictures. So um, take a glance on that. And finally, if you need to curate resources, for instance, pictures, documents, web pages, audio, whatever, and you need to do it sometimes on your own, sometimes with the help of other colleagues or students, and maybe in the end you decide that you're going to provide that to the public, mood boards are great. I love mood boards. I use mood boards for virtually everything. This seminar was prepared using a mood board. Okay, so I use Milanote and I find it really interesting. If what you want to do is to provide data, code, and additional material for papers, and you want to get a document object identifier, go to Zenodo. Okay, I've left blogs as another bonus track, and I've prepared a slide for them, only for blogs. Blogs are really useful, not only for those reading blogs, but for those writing blogs. As I said when discussing the Springer Nature survey, it was a bit sad to see that most researchers were just reading blogs, not writing blogs. Obviously, they are demanding, but there are plenty of benefits you can get from them. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my blog. I started my blog, as I said on the introduction, 15 years ago, but now I seldom post on it. At the beginning, I was really excited with my blog. Oh, I have a blog, I have a blog, I'm a blogger. And so I started publishing 2 weekly posts. On the second year, 1 post per week. On the third year, 1 post every other week. And the trend went down. So now I use my blog to post things that I think that should be there in a persistent manner for anybody. Okay? And you may wonder, why did you start having a blog? Well, one of the main reasons was to provide advice to students, trying to avoid repeating mainly the same thing once and again. So the thing is that instead of explaining something for a given student, I explain that for any conceivable student having the same question. I posted that to the blog and I submitted the link. When the question arises again, I submitted the same link. And that's why at this moment, most of the things in my blog are academic advice, some announcements about publications and preprints, assorted thoughts on research or in using social media and tools, comments on my readings, and some posts on research that can be useful for some of my courses. Okay, so it's a bridge between research and teaching. Of course, I don't have a huge audience in my blog, but it's the most viewed section on my website. Okay, almost 20% of the views are viewed to the blog, much more than publications and teaching, surprisingly much more than multimedia, and not so surprisingly much more than press clippings. Okay, the only other sections that are more successful than the blog are the front page, that's obvious, and hidden resources that I provide just for students, that they are hosted on my website but they are not public. Why I'm suggesting that having a blog can be useful for you, but you shouldn't run immediately to create a blog, because blogs, in the words of Cory Doctorow, are outboard brains. The thing is that I have lost count of how many times I've went to my blog to find something that was uh, really pertinent for a given lecture, for a given talk, for something that I was doing. And it was in the blog for maybe 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. So you don't need to remember everything every single time if you have written about that. So think about that and consider having a blog. I'm not telling you you need to have a blog, but just consider it. Regarding ResearchGate and academia.edu, I don't know really what to tell you about these platforms. As I said, I have profiles on them, but I don't use them. Both tools are rather similar. You can create an academic profile, which is fairly complete. You can provide your curriculum. You can show your publications. You can provide your publication, your full text publication, you can grow a social network and interact with other people. The thing is that ResearchGate is extremely popular. According to the Springer Nature survey that we discussed in a previous video, uh, it's the most popular platform among academics. Academia.edu, is used by a minority of them, even less than LinkedIn. So if you don't know, if you haven't heard about academia.edu, don't worry about that. In addition to that, it has been heavily criticized because a business model based on premium services. You can go to the slides and visit the links. So my advice regarding academia.edu is that if you don't have an account there, don't create one, okay? You're going to be in a minority platform that has been heavily criticized, and then that probably is just going to try to exploit your data in some way or another. So don't do it. Regarding ResearchGate, in my experience, is basically a source of spam. I don't like it, I don't use it, but I don't dare to close the profile there, okay? But I'm not doing any recommendation on this, because it's going to depend on the area where you're working in. If it's really pervasive in your area, probably you need to be there, but you need to be there and be active there. If most of your colleagues, I'm not talking about your department or your institution, I'm talking about your peers in your area of expertise, are not using ResearchGate, then maybe you don't need to worry about that. But if most of them are there, you have to be with them there in the same platform. And finally, Facebook. Facebook is the social media platform, and it's highly unlikely that you don't have an account there. It may be that even you have posted something on your research, and maybe even you have found interesting groups and people regarding research and teaching. Still, I don't recommend using Facebook for academic purposes. The thing is that context collapse, which is a problem affecting all social media, is pervasive in Facebook. Context collapse refers to the problem that you cannot tune your message depending on your assumed audience. If you're delivering a lecture for graduate students, we are going to talk using a different lexicon and going for a different depth that you're going to deliver a short talk for high school students, okay? But in social media, you don't know what your audience is. You can guess, you can assume, depending on the topics you discuss, what's your audience. But the thing is that if you go beyond the network self, you go for a comprehensive self, you are posting your opinion on politics, on movies, on films, you are discussing, this is March 2022, you are discussing the slap on the Oscars, probably sometime, sooner or later, some of your messages is going to go well beyond your closer circle, and it's going to go viral. And maybe that people are not going to be able to understood your message. Maybe they don't get the context you were assuming when posting that. Maybe they don't understand your context, or maybe they simply don't accept your context. So you are in a problem. So, for instance, uh, let's imagine that you are going to deliver a lecture for a course, and in addition to your students, you have their colleagues from your department, you have some families, some friends, some neighbors, bar buddies, people from the Parent-Teacher Association, all of them in the same room. If you try to provide content that is suitable for all of them, most of them are going to be unhappy. If you decide to go for a given target, I don't know, the students, It's going to be nice for the students, a bit simple for your colleagues, and it's going to be probably a bit difficult for your bar buddies, okay? So the thing is that if you don't want to think about all of this, thinking about having an audience that is so heterogeneous, my advice is not using Facebook as an academic tool. If in your case you're happy using Facebook for that, you have no problems posting academic issues on Facebook, and you are thriving there, just do it, okay? Indeed, this is part of my final advice here. Social media is social, and you learn to behave in a social environment by watching others. So, look at those academics who have been using social media the longest. Look at those academics that are using social media in a successful way from your point of view, that are achieving something that you would like to emulate, and follow their path. Okay, that's my advice. Don't simply follow rules, don't follow my recommendation. You are not me, you are yourself. So try to follow your own path by observing others. And with that, I'm finishing this video on the different social media platforms that can be useful for you. And in the next one, we're going to discuss my most favorite platform, Twitter.